my boss at Toys R Us, she wanted me to go get her a pack of cigarettes, a pack of Parliaments. And she was like, do you want to take my car? And she drove like an Infiniti, which is like a slightly nicer car. And I was like, absolutely not. But I did leave my shift at Toys R Us to buy my manager cigarettes once. I think I was 19 or 20. So it was legal for anyone who cares. But it was crazy. Toys R Us, worst job I ever had.
Yeah, I worked at a PetSmart for a while.
Oh, wow.
That sounds... Yeah, I feel like Toys R Us, you're dealing with more kid tantrums probably.
Really, it's the grandma, grandpa, parent tantrums that really... Kids were fine. I think like I can talk to kids pretty well. I'm not like a huge like kid guy, but I feel like they're easier to talk to. But grandma and grandpa, they are vicious when they don't have the toy that you want. Or the Power Wheel, which is like very, you know, like the mini cars.
Oh, yeah.
Like maybe you had them?
Yeah. They last like 30 minutes and then they're dead forever.
Yeah. All of like my very wealthy friends seem to have them. I'm not saying you're wealthy, but at least in my hometown, that was...
I'm assuming I had an off-brand one, and that's why
that was like a mark of status. That's why I bring it up.
Oh, for sure. As you know, I don't know how to start the podcast, so it'll either be whatever we keep from that or something along the lines of, welcome to Late to the Movies. My name is Ben Holden. This is a podcast where my friends and I get to fill in our movie blind spots. Each week we'll pick a film that either I or a guest hadn't seen before and really should have by now. This week, continuing the 1999 month, we're potting like it's 1999.
Sweet.
It's the 25th anniversary of all these movies. This week, Sixth Sense was last week. This week is The Talented Mr. Ripley.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is great. You know, honestly, I'm a little sad I didn't make it to last week's because I am a huge M. Night fan. Yeah. I'm like kind of like dyed in the wool M. Night fan. So I haven't listened to it yet, but I can't wait to check it out.
There's an unfortunate thing occurring so far. I mean, it's only twice, but I guess that's sort of a pattern.
Yeah.
I had wanted to see Trap, the new M. Night Shyamalan movie, before doing the podcast. I didn't. I still haven't.
Oh.
And then once I finished watching the movie today, I realized that there's an Andrew Scott miniseries called Ripley.
Yes. I was going to bring that up.
That I also, I would have watched this a few days ago and knocked out that series first, too. Oh, well. But, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Since I don't have anything to say about it because I haven't watched it yet, but in case people are curious, I'm aware of it.
Yeah. It's funny. It's like I was doing some pre-show research, and the sheer number of adaptations or I don't even want to call them like spinoffs of this franchise, of the series, is pretty crazy. Like to get, 6 movies in a TV show or six series. I mean, I can think of like big time properties that don't have that many entries, you know, based off of a single book. So what is it about Ripley that we got to keep adapting it? Like, you know, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today, I'm sure, but I'll let Bentley take the reins.
We're going to talk a lot about the movie today, but before we do, have you seen anything good recently?
You know what? I was in the car this morning.
Okay.
And I knew this question was coming.
Yeah.
I recently saw Perfect Days, little Wim Wenders.
Yeah.
And I liked it. It was good. See, I think like as somebody who is very into Japanese culture and anime and
toilets
and toilets.
Yeah.
I feel like this movie felt very good and comforting to me, and it felt very familiar, I think, from like an anime slice of life perspective, but I really enjoyed it. Have you checked it out?
Yes. So that was I think that was the second to last movie I watched before the Oscars happened.
Oh,
for
cool.
the Oscars. Not because I'm prioritizing it in any way, but just because a lot of the international features don't come to streaming until way later than like the movies that were just out in America in theaters.
Yeah.
So that's one of the last ones I watched before that. I loved it. I thought it was awesome. And that's also, I have the director on the mind because Paris, Texas's 4K restoration
it's just got a big I see if Patrick was
quote unquote in theaters, and that always means like, is it just New York and LA, or is it going to come
is it
here?
everywhere? Yeah.
Until it closed right after I moved here, the Columbus up the street used to do, like, I saw a lot of because this is a Janus Film 4K restoration. Yeah. They showed a lot of the touring 4K restorations. less than a 5-minute walk from where I moved, and then the theater closed maybe forever.
When this podcast really takes off and you start getting that sponsorship money, I think you can buy that theater. And you can bring it back. I think that's the goal.
That's the move.
And Patrick, I've been on the podcast with, friend of the podcast a couple times. That's his all-time favorite movie.
It's incredible. So it has. I'm really curious when I was watching Perfect Days. There is an absolutely devastating scene that is sort of so harrowing that takes place around the same point in time of the movie's runtime in Paris, Texas, that I feel like is in a similar place in Perfect Days.
Interesting.
Of just like not really sure what this movie's about or what it's trying to say, and then something happens that just so perfectly crystallizes, and you immediately get an entirely, not necessarily different, but a much more clear picture of this main character's whole thing.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah,
I'll have to check it because Paris, Texas. I'm a Canopy subscriber through Brown,
there you go.
And so I've seen it on there, and I need to just check it out.
Yeah, I love Paris, Texas. It has more of an actual narrative than Perfect Days.
Okay. See, I like Perfect Days for that. I'm also like going through my my list here. I also did a My Man Godfrey watch. Have you ever seen it? 1936. A little bit of a throwback, another Canopy.
Yikes, yeah.
And it was good. Not as good as Perfect Days in my mind, but and some of it was like partially colorized, and I don't really know how you feel about that.
We haven't done anything from the 30s or earlier yet.
Listen.
I'd love to.
I would love to hop on one of those.
It's hard to get friends to commit to black and white. Even never mind.
Oh yeah. Anytime you need someone.
Okay, good to know.
I'll be there.
Good to know.
I've seen quite a few.
Just doing Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf was difficult because that was
I see.
In black and white, even though it was way past they had already done colors.
Yeah. I think in a way it's like you see black and white cameras from, especially like television cameras. It looks so much clearer than like a color TV does from that time. The
earliest we've done is either Maltese Falcon or Citizen Kane, whichever. I think they're both 41.
Yeah, I believe so.
So I'm not sure which one's over.
What about you? What have you seen lately that's been good?
Nothing. I don't know. I watched a lot of Love Is Blind this week.
Oh, is that the Netflix show?
Yeah, I had never watched any of it, and I've watched 2.5 seasons.
Wow, so it's one of
since
those.
Starting earlier this week.
What's the one where they dress them up as monsters?
This one's more emotional monsters, but it's the blind part of it is they have to meet in these, like, they call them pods. They're just in rooms where they can't see the person they're talking to.
Okay.
And it's a group of about like 15 men and 15 women. I think they never specify how many people are there. And since it's reality TV, it pretty quickly zeroes in on like, these are the 7 people on each side we want you to care about.
Gotcha.
They have to talk for a few days, not that long, maybe a week or less, and then they have to decide to get engaged. Have to is putting it wrong. They don't have to. If you want to remain on the television program,
you got to get engaged. Is there a prize? Is there like some
marriage?
Money? Okay. If my fiance is listening to this, the greatest prize of all, you know.
Wow. Yeah. So there is that prize. They send. Yeah. If you get engaged, you get to see what the other person looks like.
Oh, cool.
After you get engaged,
I think I've seen one where it's like she looks like Megan Fox, quote unquote. I'm doing air quotes. But
people keep mentioning that, but I guess I haven't gotten there yet.
I've just seen that on Twitter, so we'll see. You know?
Yes, people keep referencing stuff that I haven't come across myself yet.
Interesting. Well, when you do, let me know.
This came up because it's casting in New England right now. So if you know anyone interested,
any interest in you hopping on there?
I have some friends that want me to apply, so we'll see how that goes.
Should. That'd be cool.
I think the application is just like a keeping up appearances thing. I'm sure they just recruit from Instagram, but.
Oh, I see.
But if not, sure, I'll throw my hat in the ring.
That'd be fun, you know.
I think it'd be a goofy, fun time. Yeah.
Yeah. Even just so you could give us the skinny.
Maybe I'd get married.
Yeah.
With someone that I didn't see before meeting.
Yes.
Or getting engaged, rather. And then they're married or not within a month.
Wow. I mean, that's a little bit of a tight timeline.
It's pretty tight.
But, dating apps, I hear they're going downhill.
So
why not hop on a reality television?
Yeah, the world's a dumpster fire just across the board. So why not?
You know, why not? Why not try something new?
Exactly. So yeah, I wish I'd seen something highfalutin or old or classic, but nope. Been watching Love Is Blind.
Well, that's also, it's not quite a segue into the movie yet, but I did a Bourne trilogy rewatch.
Okay.
And I was like, we can talk about this a little bit more, but you see Matt Damon, he's got some acting chops. And then it's funny is like the movies he gets older, it's like he looks less like Tom Ripley and more just like old Matt Damon.
Yes. Yeah, it is. This is an interesting spot in time between my image of him for most of his career and my Good Will Hunting image of him.
Yes. Because this is 2 years after Good Will Hunting.
I think so. He feels younger here, though. I don't know if it's just maybe skinnier.
Yeah.
Or he doesn't have a bowl cut.
I also thought it was funny I watched the trailer and it said Academy Award winner Matt Damon.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, yeah, I mean, he is an Academy Award. But it's funny to see what's ostensibly a young man who not win for acting. Went for this too. I also had this. I don't know if we're talking about this yet, but I had a list of all their.
It's weird how it's worked for those guys. Like Ben Affleck, also technically for the same thing.
Yes,
and then winning as a producer of Argo, well, not even getting nominated for Best Director. It's interesting. You can still put that on there in the trailer, right? Yeah. So, I love movies that have great. Character actors.
Yes.
This was great for that. I mean, Philip Seymour Hoffman's in this.
We've talked about him in the hallways. I love him. He's fantastic. R.I.P. to a true legend of the craft. Another
triple named Philip Baker Hall's in this one too. He's incredible. He comes in at the end. I was so excited to see him. He's the private detective.
Yes. From Seinfeld. I go, hey, he's from Seinfeld,
Yeah.
He's also in a P.T. Anderson movie. Not Boogie Nights.
Hard Eight.
Yes, which also is a PSH movie.
Yeah.
Philip Seymour Hoffman is also in that.
Yes. Yeah, those guys. You can't get the triple name Phils away from each other.
Yeah, they love each other.
I'm trying to think, what did I watch recently he was in? We did The Truman Show. Maybe that was what it was the year before this. He's in that too. Anyway, and he's in Argo, speaking of which.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I also want to pull something up here too while we're kind of preparing. I am like, when I'm watching a movie, I'm always so curious about the actors' ages and everything. And through this movie, it seems like it has a lot of actors that have been in the business for so long. You can't like imagine them being anything other than like just kind of like timeless. I think Gwyneth Paltrow, she's like always been in my mind, like 35, 40 for her whole career. Jude Law, kind of the same thing. Matt Damon, kind of an older guy. And it's funny to like look at them and see, oh my gosh, these are all like 2-3 year age difference from like them doing it. And for them to like still be in the business and still making movies, I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, it's cool. And I feel like Cate Blanchett's always the same for me, especially, of just like sort of crystallized age.
Yes, exactly. Especially because like, I think my first.
I don't think she looks that much older now. Not that she looks like she's 50 when she's 30 there. But,
I think my first introduction to her being The Fellowship of the Ring, where she is like so ethereal, where she is like, immortal, unaging. I was thinking
of that too. Yeah.
It's like, it kind of fits too, especially because that was only 4 years later from this movie. Yeah. So.
She'd be because when she goes all like super scion and gets I'd be a queen, beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful and terrible is
that's 2001. So that's 2 years later.
Oh, 2 years. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
they filmed them all. They're probably around late 90s anyway.
Man, imagine being just a brief 32 years old and having to do that. Oh
my God.
Especially because Jude Law is younger in this movie than I am now, and what a man,
Yeah, that's the other people I've talked to about this movie have like just wanted to make sure. Are you going to talk about Jude Law's hair?
Yes,
general look.
We've got to talk about it.
And he's out of the movie before the halfway point.
He is,
so
which I think kind of surprised me. I was reaching for the remote and the popcorn he was getting clubbed to death. And I was like, how much longer of this movie do we have? But I also think to the viewers, to the listeners at home, I came in my best Tom Ripley cosplay.
You really did.
I've got my checkered kind of like a polyester blend shirt, and I had a pair of loafers on, but in Bentley's apartment, I removed them, and a pair of khaki pants. So I wanted to feel like Tom Ripley while we were talking about the talented Mr. Ripley. So I said, I'm probably the first guy to dress up apart from Halloween. And you said no one's dressed up for Halloween. So I'm just the guy dressed up. Yeah. Not that this is very different than what I wear on a day-to-day basis, but I felt like I had to go all out.
It's a bit plussed up for the theme,
exactly,
I would say.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought about it.
And like you said, you have your glasses on, so you're in Tom mode.
I'm in Tom mode. I should have put my hair down across my face too. But I wanted to really see if I could, get into the character. And of course, as always, I have my book of notes.
Yeah. So let's officially kick into it then. I hadn't seen this film before. I think you said you hadn't either.
I've seen it like bits and pieces on like TNT.
Yep. I knew generally what it was about. Mm-hmm. I knew that part of the narrative would be that Damon's character at least is kind of queer coded, and they have this thing going on. I had seen the scene of them on the boat where he said like being clubbed to death with a oar.
Yeah.
So I knew that was coming. I didn't know necessarily how early in the movie that was coming.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I hadn't seen it before.
I had like caught bits of pieces of it, on like I said, like a TNT or something. But it's one of those, definitely. I'm late to the movies on this one, and sure. I think that having watched it now, I'm surprised at like how the rest of the movie unfolds after Jude Law's death.
Yes.
Also, just kind of talking about Jude's Law death, the practical effect with the makeup.
Oh yeah, that's really good.
It was disturbing. Disturbing. I've seen I don't watch very many scary movies, but I've seen some disturbing things, and that was very believable. Yeah. If you told me Matt Damon accidentally hit Jude Law in the head, I would have believed you.
It has that sort of moment of like a thing happens and you don't know how bad it is yet, and like I feel like whatever the prosthetic effect of the blood coming out was like waits just long enough that you're like, oh, maybe it's just going to bruise or whatever. And then it's like, oh no, he's very gashed open.
Yes. Yeah.
God. It's good stuff. Do you want to give us a 1-minute plot summary?
Yeah, sure. So no problem.
You have notes, so it feels like you're ready.
I do. I have some notes. So the movie starts off with Matt Damon, his character, Tom Ripley. He's playing piano in New York. He borrows a jacket from somebody who also went to Princeton. And it's this seemingly innocuous act that kind of like sets the whole course of the movie up. A man who sees his jacket says, oh, my son went to Princeton. He's in Italy right now. Could you go to Italy and bring him back for me? And Matt Damon says yes. He kind of like shows himself as a liar to a couple characters, saying that he is in fact the man. He is in fact Dickie Greenleaf. To several characters, but he goes, meets with Dickie, meets with Gwyneth Paltrow, Marge, I believe is her name, and he kind of latches onto them, and he becomes kind of obsessed with Dickie. He becomes, obsessed with his life, his clothes, maybe even with, romantically involved with Dickie, in love with him. But Dickie soon gets bored with him, and he says, I think it's best that you leave, Tom. They go out onto a boat in northern Italy, and They have a confrontation. Tom, played by Matt Damon, kills Jude Law, and really from there it's just he's trying to keep up these appearances, right? He assumes Jude Law's identity as Dickie Greenleaf, killing his friends, killing Philip Seymour Hoffman when he comes to his apartment to check on Dickie and see what's going on. He misleads Gwyneth Paltrow's character into thinking that Dickie doesn't love her or is going to love her. And then when things get too much with the police kind of surrounding him after the death of Philip Seymour Hoffman, he writes a suicide note from Dickie's perspective. And he basically gets away with it. His father thinks that his son committed suicide. He's not super interested in it. And then there's another character who Matt Damon kind of has a relationship with, friends with Gwyneth Paltrow. And they kind of start to have a romance. But then Cate Blanchett's character comes in, and he realizes that his lie of being Dickie's caught up to him, and he has to kill this man. I forget, what is his character? Peter. He has to kill Peter. And the movie kind of ends that way. Yeah. I know it's a little bit of a rambling plot summary, but it's a difficult movie to sum up, I would say.
It is, yeah. I think that's one of the harder recent 1-minute plot summaries. I think Halloween 3 is maybe the hardest one we've ever had.
There's so many lines.
that's-
There's so many characters lying or like
Yeah,
being
for sure.
someone else.
It's all about manipulating.
Yes.
And Matt Damon within the same scene is playing multiple roles.
Yes.
In his character, he is playing to the world multiple roles.
Yes.
Yeah, I liked another guy I was excited to see, British actor man who plays Peter, who was on the UK Friends equivalent sitcom Coupling.
Oh. And
which is really good. And then in Pirates
Commodore Norrington.
Yes. Yeah. Mostly
he's
Pirates.
He's fantastic.
Yeah.
And he really hasn't done like a whole lot since these.
He's really good in this. I should say. I mean, everyone's really good in this.
Yeah, there's not a bad performance, I don't think, in the whole movie.
Jude Law doing American accent is off-putting. Not in a he's doing it bad way, but just in a like that's not the voice that comes out of that face.
Yeah, I'm so used to him as like a Watson,
Sure.
or as a kind of like that.
Just some version of British words.
And he's in The Holiday. Is that the movie?
Yes.
I'm thinking of?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think
he gets paired up with Cameron Diaz.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. He seems to find these beautiful blonde leading ladies, in the arms of but I think like him, I think he manages to capture something so distinctly American too, which is this kind of rich loungingness too. He seems to always be lounging, and he's got it so perfectly. None of the British upper crust of rigidity is in his movements at all.
Yeah.
He really embodies this kind of like loafing.
Yeah.
And I love that.
It is such a great, and I'm bad at saying like this is obviously this decade, but this is what 50s.
Yeah. They said they graduated in 1956.
Okay,
so it must be.
And it looks like they're supposed to be before 30, so within 10 years.
Yeah.
And then they're in a different country, and then it's like I don't know what they.
Yeah, I don't know what the fashion was
50s,
there.
Early 60s looked like in Italy.
Yeah.
But he has just this great mid-century idol rich vibe that you're just like, oh, he just is that guy.
Yeah.
And Gwyneth Paltrow would be that guy's girlfriend that he won't settle down with.
Yes. And is getting into all sorts of trouble because of that. Yeah.
And I like the world that Tom can't quite access but so wants to, that like, yeah, everybody knows. Oh, we've heard a lot about you. Everyone knows. Oh, yeah, you're going skiing with them for Christmas.
Yeah.
And, oh, sure. Yeah.
He's like, how do you know about that? He's like,
I've heard a lot about you.
Everybody knows.
Everybody knows.
I was like, oh wow, yeah.
And I forget whatever line Cate Blanchett says when they meet up in Rome and they're like walking past the Trevi Fountain and Spanish Steps, and it's something about I only feel like I can talk to other rich people who hate money.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so.
Or I can only relate to other folks who are rich and talk about how much they hate money, and it's like, yeah, that's an exact type of person.
Yes. And it's funny too because it's like Matt Damon so desperately is like trying to embody like these people and these like characters, and he has such like proximity to it. But there's one character who sees through him right away, and it just like clocks him like the instant he like walks in. And that's Philip Seymour Hoffman's character, Freddie. He knows and puts Matt Damon ill at ease, because of how bad he realizes he doesn't fit in here.
It's thinking about other people who are like, yeah, I always picture them as like middle, like they're in their mid 30s or around 40, and seeing them in their 20s is crazy. It's like. That's what Philip Seymour Hoffman looks like in The Master. Like, I don't know. He just has a mustache there, but it's the same
exact
guy.
same. Yeah. Yeah. It's almost funny. It's like when he has shorter hair, he almost looks older than he does when he like is older and does have more hair.
A few years after Twister, where he has like a bit broier vibe.
Yes.
And so maybe he feels
I just watched
younger.
that too. Which is,
right. Yeah. Yeah. But, man, great cast. Everyone is very attractive in this movie. It's crazy.
Yeah. And the clothes,
The clothes are great.
We got to talk a little bit about the clothes, a little about the hair.
I forgot. We talked about this offline before the podcast started, that this is just like the fashion that's around now. The classic American sportswear thing.
Yes. I'm a huge like Ivy style guy. I'm like, dressed up as right now. And I think it's like so funny that this movie is a movie that's so not about clothes but says it so much through the clothes that the characters wear. Matt Damon dancing in his coattails, and everything, while he thinks Jude Law's character is in Rome still. I mean, it just shows you that like it's to them, it's not about putting on a suit. You know, it's not with the tie. It's not how you dress. It's not how you look. But it's like what those clothes say about you too.
Yes.
You know, it's like the fact that you're comfortable in these clothes is one thing, but it's another thing to be comfortable in them. You know, to your very core. And I think that movie is really about this. Like, you can't put on a suit and become a rich person. You know.
Yeah.
At least in their mind.
You still have that basement that you can't let anyone see.
Yes. Exactly. It's so funny too, the scene in which
when he starts having nightmares, I'm like, I don't know if this is maybe literalizing it too much for me, but I think it still works.
Yes, I totally agree. And I think the scene when Philip Seymour Hoffman comes to his apartment during Christmas and he goes, you know, did this place come furnished? Because this isn't Dickie's style. The only thing that looks like Dickie is you.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, oh, what is that? What is that saying? Like, oh, this.
He's pretty, and then he's like explicitly like this, because did this come furnished? Like, because no person who knows what they're doing would do it. Would like
do this. And he said, what does he say? It's very bourgeois.
Yeah, he does.
He says that. And as someone who is bourgeois, you know, like he is very clearly a rich person. To be considered that is like bad. You know, and it's like he's frustrated that Matt Damon is like playing him and playing the Greenleafs and everything.
The only thing that does sort of, I wouldn't even say strain credulity, but just like people making bad decisions, and maybe it's just rich people thinking they're untouchable or whatever. It feels like a number of people figure out that Matt Damon is capable of murder and then confront him directly with no plan.
Yes, you know, Gwyneth Paltrow's confrontation, I think, is one that
more emotional, at least.
Yes,
it's sort of like in the moment, kind of. Doing this, and then is trying to get out of the room. And that shot of him, he's wearing his white robe, and he's got the razor, you know, in his hand, and it's the blood, you know, as he cut his finger on it. And he's really just saved. She's only really saved by Peter, you know, bursting through. We can probably get into like what that means later on, but yeah, this idea that you know Matt Damon or you suspect Matt Damon to be a killer. And you're going to come in and say, you killed Dickie. And it's like, there's no one else around. What are you going to do in that? When he brains Philip Seymour Hoffman with the Marvel bust, you know, it was pretty interesting, pretty crazy. The Marvel bust that Philip Seymour Hoffman had just been making fun of, essentially, is
and like touching it and kind of like knocking. And then I loved, you know, the shot of the bust on the floor with the blood, you know, on one side of the face, very similar to when he killed Dickie. When you're watching a movie and something like that happens, you go, wow. Yeah, filmmaker was really filmmaking today.
Yeah, I don't think I've mentioned yet. Anthony Minghella directed and wrote this. I believe he gets nominated for screenplay, his second screenplay nomination, and he died really young in his 50s.
Yeah, I noticed that on the. How old were they then?
Yeah, exactly.
What else?
English Patient is another big one for him. Gosh. At least as far as the Oscars go, another big one for him. Yeah. He produced Michael Clayton, which is dope.
Oh man, that's a Tony Gilroy? Yes. I'm just speaking
Tony
of.
G, yeah.
I'm not to take us off, but it's a Bourne movie and Andor, which I've been watching the Star Wars show Andor, and it's good. But yeah.
English Patient, Italian Mr. Ripley, so mid to late 90s, he was big, and then Cold Now in 2003 was also Anthony Minghella.
I've not seen those, but
yeah. Produced The Reader in 2008, so posthumously nominated for Best Picture then too.
Wow.
Yeah. I didn't realize he had died so young, 54. Crazy.
Oh, and he was executive producer of Margaret. Have you seen this?
God, yeah. That was supposed to come out while he was still alive.
Yeah. That's kind of a weird movie too, you know.
Apparently, is that Lonergan wrote that or something? Yeah. All to say. Yeah.
He did get that screenplay nod, though.
For this.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool movie. That's my takeaway. I don't know. Like, we don't need to get too hung up on the plot, but I don't want to focus too much on just the beginning of the movie, but I feel like my image of the movie in my head before watching it was the three extremely now famous people hanging out in Italy, lounging around. Yeah. And that's really the first like 50 minutes of the 2 hour, 20-minute long movie.
Yeah. When
there's like another hour and almost a half after Jude Law dies.
Yeah. And it's so funny too, because it's like they're on the poster, you know, they get all of like kind of the billing and everything, but really it's a story that kind of quickly falls apart. Our characters' lives quickly fall apart after the death of Jude Law.
Yeah.
But when you think about the movie, I think it's like, oh, summertime in Italy, how wonderful can that be,
It is. I mean, it looks wonderful until the murdering, and the colors, the locations, like we already mentioned, the fashion. It just is very very aspirational.
It is.
And that's the point, right? Ripley is fully seduced by this lifestyle. The dude sort of also, or maybe instead of, but like at the same time, it's all the stuff that comes with the dude that he is so into. What was the movie with? Okay, whatever. You'll know, so I won't have to Google it.
Yeah.
With Barry Keoghan and Jacob Elordi.
Yeah, Saltburn.
Saltburn, yeah, the Emerald Fennell film. Did you see Saltburn?
I've not seen it.
Do you know what Saltburn's
I do.
about?
I know
Okay.
like all about it, but I didn't have the chance to check
Well, we don't have to talk about it now. My supervisor at work very much liked Saltburn.
Oh, really?
Some people had a really good time with Saltburn, I know. Some people were like, what are we trying to say with this
I do know
movie?
there's a bathtub scene
Sure.
in Saltburn, as there's a bathtub scene in this,
Yes, but I just remember that coming out and a lot of people making comparisons to Talented Mr. Ripley.
Yes. I do think it's, kind of thinking about the bathtub scene. And ultimately, like,
I think a lot of people who are a few years older than me that saw this in the 90s, especially women, especially young women, that's a very important scene in their personal development.
I do think it's funny because it's like you have a character who, one, he doesn't know who he wants to be. He doesn't know if he wants to be Tom Ripley. He doesn't know if he wants to be Dickie Greenleaf. And then I think there's like a very real part of him who doesn't know if he's straight, if he's bisexual, if he's homosexual. And I think like this panic that he has about, what world do I inhabit and what do I do is, really, his driving force throughout the movie. And the bathtub scene is kind of like the start of like the end. It's like this mini conflict between two characters, and it's very unspoken. But it kind of like it's his first rejection, right? Of
yes, like it's the first thing that Dickie's like outright sort of denied him.
Yeah.
And he kind of is like, I didn't mean while you were in it. It's like, he did, obviously.
Yeah. And it's funny that Matt Damon uses like this language often of like comparing Dickie to being brothers. I have it in my notes here. It's a secret between us and I'll keep it. He's referring to the death of a character, but he says, especially now since we are brothers, and it's like he very clearly wants to be more than brothers, know, but I think like the intimacy of like boys, the closest men can be without being gay is like being brothers. And I think Tom really desperately wants, to be loved by Dickie, and to not feel rejected by him.
Yep.
But yeah, it's very interesting how he constantly kind of refers back to this like familial element of it.
For sure. And then later on when they're on the boat and he's like mad at him and he's like, oh, we're brothers. Like we're obviously so much more than that. And you're going to be like, he never agreed with you when you said that. Like you're the one who said that. Like,
yeah. And it's almost like he's trying to make it true by saying it. He's trying to like because he wills so much else into existence, I do think as far as con mans go, I don't know if he's the best con man,
He seems to get away with a lot.
It almost feels, and I don't want to make like a trite comparison, but like with American Psycho, where it feels like he gets away with it because other characters just don't believe and how like incredulous it is, like, oh, Patrick Bateman, he's not a murderer. He's obviously not killing these people. And it's like very similar to like Tom, where the father just isn't interested in the fact that, he did murder his son, and he did murder his son's friend. And the women, in the movie are like not listened to. Yeah. And Gwyneth Paltrow is just kind of treated as just hysterical. Yeah. And their confrontation they have on the dock too is very interesting, that with Tom saying, I love you, keep that in your pocket for a rainy day. And, that just kind of like sets her off and she like starts attacking him. But
why do I get the feeling there's never a Ripley rainy day?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, it's great. Yeah. This is just like, man, just watching this and then thinking of movies that come out now that are all on, green screen or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, you got to just go film at the Spanish Steps. You got to actually go to Venice and film in the square with the pigeons. Come on.
And it's also funny to think of like you said, them doing it now. I like even wonder, can you do it now without like seeing somebody in the background, like kind of, it just feels like the 90s existed to be like a different time, know? Before like technology was like rampant and like the ease of being like Matt Damon, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Jude Law are like in Rome right now. We got to go, it's like, it's more difficult to like get people there too. So I think like that is like a very interesting, it's an interesting cinematic time capsule.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's what this whole month's about, is sort of looking at it. And so this movie, it wasn't a Star Wars Episode 1 Phantom Menace, but it has a lot of people who are at this inflection point in movies, and obviously important to a lot of people who are like around 40 years old right now.
Yeah.
This hit at an extremely important time. I was racking my brain, like, surely we've done Matt Damon and Gwyneth Paltrow before. I didn't know if we had done Jude Law. We actually did Matt Damon and Gwyneth Paltrow at the same time in the film Contagion.
Oh, wow.
Which she's only in for a few minutes. But Matt Damon's
a very important few minutes.
Kind of an ensemble movie that Matt Damon is also kind of the star of.
Yeah.
I'm sure we've done other stuff too, but that's all I could think of. This is, we haven't done a Gwyneth starring role yet. I don't think we've done any Jude Law before. I don't actually know if we've done Philip Seymour Hoffman before. When
you do, I could talk about him for hours.
He's great. Yes. We'll do like what would be the most annoying one? Mission Impossible 3.
Yes.
Maybe Along Came Polly. Maybe that'd be like the worst one we could do.
Yeah, the worst one. I think he is good in Mission Impossible 3. But
he is the only good part of Mission Impossible.
I am not a huge J.J. Abrams fan.
It's so J.J. Abrams. It's J.J. Abrams trying to do a Bourne movie.
Yeah,
because it's a lot of shaky hand.
It is. I don't like saying this. J.J. Abrams, a little bit of a hack in my mind. I think he's got a couple interesting things that he can do, but I don't think
lens flares.
Lens flares. To be kind of cliche about it, but yeah, he's okay. He came to speak at Brown, and Patrick and I thought about going just to hear what he had to say, but
I didn't notice until afterwards.
It's like sold out.
And Damon Lindelof went to speak at Brown like about a year ago too. And it was like, the guy that actually was show running Lost.
Yeah.
After the pilot, at least.
Yeah.
I'm up and down with Abrams. I don't know.
I do like the first Star Trek in his Star Trek reboot.
Yes.
I thought it was fun. I thought it was slick.
I think Into Darkness has a lot of the same issues that Rise of Skywalker has.
Oh my God.
As far as like he set up like a really good legacy trilogy kickoff in both of those series.
We're inviting the darkest part of the internet into the podcast by saying Rise of Skywalker,
Sorry, we won't talk Return of the Jedi, but
it's funny to even like watch those movies because it's like you're watching like a train wreck, like $100 million train wreck,
So Palpatine's just been growing Star Destroyers out of his thoughts.
Yeah.
Who's manning those Star Destroyers?
Yeah,
do they live there with him? Who are all those hooded figures in his weird Coliseum at the end?
Yeah, and then my least favorite part, the kiss, the romance of
that's pretty bad. The theater I was in laughed.
Yeah.
Like awkwardly, like, oh no, honey.
Yeah. Not to relitigate the Rise of Skywalker, if that's, I don't know, is that what it's called?
Who knows? But yes.
But I also thought it was funny, taking it, kind of bringing it back to the talented Mr. Ripley. I did think that, obviously being set in the 50s, jazz is like a big part of it. But like kind of like a core tenet of jazz is like this improvisation, like it's constantly like moving, and Matt Damon's character, he is kind of constantly like improving. And so even though he doesn't necessarily care for jazz, as it's revealed, when Dickie has the moment with them in the jazz festival where, do we really even know each other at Princeton, Tom? I don't think we did, when they have this big moment. It's funny that it's happening as a jazz festival, as kind of Tom's improv is kind of failing around him. It's like he studies and he does these things, but he he had to kind of like realize that it was the end was there for him, and that he was the gig was up. And I thought that was funny how like palpable the tension is in the jazz festival scene, you know, with this mini, you know, we have several mini confrontations that lead to a larger one, but that one, you know, is funny. That he just kind of comes out and says it, you know, what we've
and it seems like in the moment, Dickie's sort of like taking it in like a sporting manner, like, yeah, I had a bet on whether or not you were complete bullshit. And he's just sort of like happy he was right, and it doesn't really bother him.
Yeah,
stuff just sort of rolls off this dude.
Yeah, but
yeah, he shouldn't have gone on that boat with him alone.
He should not have. And I think it's funny too that he acts like it doesn't bother him, but when he does have like a moment of honesty with Matt Damon, that's the moment he's killed. You know, he's like, you're very boring. You know, I'm tired of you.
That's the worst.
You know, he has like this where he's on his first time he's really honest with himself and on his feelings. It ends up being the death of him, quite literally.
Yeah, it's a very wrought scene. So one of the things that was in my head while I was watching this, I want to get the name right. I think so. There's a YouTuber, Matt Baum. Mm-hmm. Baume. Yeah, Matt Baum. This video is a few years old, but was surfaced to me in, if you know the YouTuber H-Bomber guy.
Yeah.
He recently...
Friend of the channel.
Definitely never heard of us, and that's fine. He makes one or two really great long videos now a year. He had one on plagiarism recently that eventually turned into specifically one person's plagiarism, specifically someone who was plagiarizing queer creators.
Yes. If you have time to check out the video, definitely watch it.
It's really good.
It is very good.
There was one video that got discussed a lot in that, which was by this YouTuber, Matt Baum, about the title of it is What Makes Disney's Villains So Gay.
Yeah.
And it's talking about when they are making Sleeping Beauty and Snow White and the original Disney animated films all the way through Little Mermaid and Lion King, why so many of their villains are seemingly have these qualities that at the time they were purposely instilled with to connote like a queer impression. I don't know. And so it's talking about how those aspects of their personalities were used at the time, because he gets into it better, and I'm not going to try and recreate the entire thesis of it here, but it's really interesting. It talks about the Hays Code and how you couldn't necessarily say someone was gay, and if someone's evil, they have to have a comeuppance at the end. And but it's talking about why these characters, even despite that, appeal to modern gay people so much, because this was the only place some of them were seeing representation, is sort of what it boils down to. But anyway, so it's showing through that how these particular personality traits were essentially coded as evil. Yeah. And then thinking about how it's presented in this movie. It's like, oh man, I wonder what argument they're trying to make. I don't think so it felt not just the time period being like late 50s, early 60s, whenever it is. I'm sure they specify at one point. I'm bad at paying attention. It's also feels like a throwback in that sense, where there is a character and there's some coded thing about them, but it makes them a villain. We talked about this in an actual movie from that time, 1941's Maltese Falcon. Yeah. How they can never say the character that Peter Lorre plays, Joel Cairo, is gay, but at one point they say his business cards smell like lavender. And that's how you know he's not to be trusted.
I see.
And so it's stuff like that feels like sort of what's in this movie too. I thought the coding was going into the movie was more below the radar, I guess. Yeah. But it's obviously not. This character gets pretty explicit about it eventually. Yeah. Which is cool.
Yeah.
It's for him. Yeah, go Tom. I just meant it was interesting. That's why now in a lot of ways the movie wasn't what I was expecting. That was one of them.
Yeah. And I think it's funny too that like we see him kiss women, but we don't ever see him like the kind of tenderness he has at the end of the movie with Peter. He murders him, you know. Yeah. It's like kind of like this first time Tom is like acquiescing to like being gay, and he ends up strangling this guy who's really just saying nice things about him, and out of fear for being discovered, and not being dicky, you know, to what is Cate Blanchett's character's name? Cate Blanchett's character. And it's funny that he in a moment where he has like this tenderness, like this intimacy with another man, he murders him.
Yeah.
You know, and Philip Seymour Hoffman's character, I wouldn't say is like interested, and I don't think there's like any interest from Tom or any interest in there, but you know, he murders him too, and it's like, you know, men alone in their apartment, and there's like kind of like this weird subtext that the police keep hinting at, and you know, he physically like carries him, and it's like, oh, like this kind of like brotherly bond that he has, even though he is dead.
He says a number of times that he has a fiance back in America.
Yeah, you know, and oh, your parents met her. She's great. Blah blah blah.
And it always serves to like be a comfort to whoever he's talking to. They're like, oh, thank God you have a fiance. Is sort of the, you know, the vibe that.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. It's sort of like it puts the viewer in a really interesting place where you do feel bad for this guy to an extent, because you are seeing him process in real time what he has to do at the end of the movie, or what at least what he thinks he has to do at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
After getting just a few scenes of like, oh, he feels like he can actually be himself. And then he's realizing like, I can never be myself.
Yeah.
But in the literal text of this movie, he's realizing I can never be myself because I can never admit to all the murders I've done.
Yeah.
Which is complicating the message in my head a little bit.
Yes. Yeah. And then like, you know, the villain, the quote unquote villains of the movie are the characters who are trying to like out him as a murderer, but out him, you know, maybe as like someone who is not like this straight heterosexual guy who's like, you know, it does that. And I think it's funny that's like you're almost rooting against Philip Seymour Hoffman. You're rooting against Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yeah. They're antagonists, even though they're not like evil villains.
Yeah.
They're just,
you're forced to kind of be like, oh, well, I don't know if I want Tom to be found out. You know, I kind of want to see how this plays. And you're kind of shocked when you find yourself being like sympathetic, I guess, to them, you know? And I think at the end of the movie, it felt jarring to me that he murders him, because it's like, no, like, you know, I understood why you murdered Dickie, and I understood why you murdered Philip Seymour Hoffman, but you can't murder Peter at the end of the movie, you know? It's like, it kind of takes your sympathy that you've had for 2 hours and 29 minutes. And it's like, it kind of like throws in your face. It's like, he's not a sympathetic character, and you've been rooting for him, sympathizing with him. He got everything he wanted. He got the big part of the trust fund. He got away with murder, and you know, he's just going to do it again too. And you know, as a viewer, where do you put this now? You know, and you mentioned you wanted some time to sit with it, and I think, you know, having watched it last night, I also feel that way. It's like, what do I do now with this movie and these feelings that I have towards Tom?
And the movie ends on what you realize were the first images of the movie, of just the sort of like pieces of the screen coming into not focus, but like strips of the screen moving what you can see of Ripley sitting
and like
by
the
himself.
Beautiful like mirrors like rocking with the boat too,
and then it's sort of like a door closes on him.
Yeah.
That is, I mean, he's been mentioning a basement that he's locking everything in, but it is very much, it's a door. It feels like he's in a closet.
Yes.
It feels fairly literal at that point.
Yes. Yeah.
Anyway, all to say, I liked it.
I did too.
I think I liked it. I have to think about it more. So I mentioned the thing I took into it. I'm trying to do less like research, fun fact finding, because I find then I just am reading like a Wikipedia article. People. But I had just watched that video. Yeah. So I was thinking about that. I was thinking about Saltburn, and then I was talking to someone earlier today about the movie that's like, oh, this is one of my favorite movies. They study psychology, and they watched it in school.
Wow.
As a I guess example of a sociopath also.
Wow. Yeah.
Or I'm not saying that they are saying this is the textbook example of that, but comparing how they understand sociopathy or whatever the term would be to how the character is interacting with the world, and processing and saying like, oh, everyone thinks they're doing the right thing. No one thinks they're a bad person. So there's some stuff in there that isn't like so subtle, but it's still so many different angles you can take on this. And that's why I probably need to sit with it more.
Yeah. I definitely feel like I do too. I think it doesn't feel like a movie that, you watch and then you just kind of like forget about it feels like it lingers, and it's funny too, how many, we mentioned this before, but it's like this has been adapted 6 times.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like clearly the story and like this character, it like sticks with people and they want to understand him more and they want to like try to figure him out. And I don't know. I can't speak to the other adaptations. But I know that, the character of Tom Ripley is one that, is haunting, and I feel haunted by him.
Mm-hmm. For sure. It's interesting to see how, despite this being like 1999 Matt Damon and he's like skinnier and more ripped than he was in Good Will Hunting, just like
when he took his shirt off, I was like, did he need to have a 6-pack? I was like,
how is this helping this character's development? But he still looks like he's so white. That first beach scene and his shorts are a strange color and and you're like, and
he has his dress shoes with him to the beach.
Right, yeah.
And he puts them on, he takes them off, and
he just looks so wrong next to how comfortable and in his element Jude Law is in that moment.
So bronzed.
Yeah.
Sandy blonde hair, like tousled back.
Yeah. So there's a difference. So it's just interesting, like how immediately clear it could make that difference from this guy who was in great shape, ripped, handsome, Hollywood leading man, and be like, he looks like shit next to this guy.
He looks like a weirdo.
Yeah.
He's like that kind of
don't want to hang out with that guy.
Neon green.
Yeah.
It's
a wild choice for a bathing suit.
Yeah. Especially at the time too, I imagine it felt.
Yeah.
But all that to kind of say too, it's like these characters, they all exist within, society's like role that they play, I thought there was a scene kind of funny too. It's like, kind of immediately before the beach scene is when Jude Law's father's chauffeur comes and picks him up, and you see like the hanging carcasses of like pigs. He's like, that $1,000 would really come in handy, It's like for those of us at home who have the inflation calculator open at any period piece, $1,000 in 56 is $11,000 today, Dang. So I think like having that is always like a good for me to have. But it's funny to see like how he is so out of his element, and then when these characters are in his element, they're like, oh, you got hanging pigs like across the street, and he lives in a basement apartment, you know, like he has like this big kind of like walk up, and
it's very noisy. There's like you can hear the people above it,
beating his wife and everything, and Cate Blanchett's character, when they first meet, she's like, what's your secret? How do you have so few bags?
Right.
And it's like, she's like, look at me. And it's like, it pans over and it's like this huge, multiple bellhops attending to all of her bags. Right. And it's funny to do that because, Matt Damon doesn't fit in, and there's all these little reminders that he's not tan. He's wearing the wrong things. He's got his wrong shoes, and, he's desperate to fit in though.
Yeah.
And the lengths that he goes to be accepted by these people.
I think this is, so having not seen it before and now also still processing it, also thinking about the actors in it.
Yeah.
Do you have a general Matt Damon head ranking? I know you like the Bourne films a lot.
Oh, of all of his films?
All of his films as films, or his performances in them?
Oh, okay. I just watched the Bourne movies. I think they're good. They're like fun action movies for what they are.
It's not really an acting showcase.
Yeah. I think to give like a dad film answer, I like The Martian.
Very dad film.
And my dad actually just texted me.
Nice.
About he sends me a photo and says, name this movie. So I'll have to take a look when this is done.
It sounds like a fun game.
But I think
it doesn't work on audio though.
Yeah. I just describe it to you.
Yeah.
Ones that he doesn't play a big role in, but I do really enjoy the Ocean's movies.
He's great in that. Linus.
He's so funny,
really good.
And they're so good. But I would say like my definitive Matt Damon movie, I do like The Martian. I do.
Yeah.
I like.
Good.
I
mean, it's the opposite. It's very much an action show, an acting showcase for the big chunk of it that isn't action.
I think like I think his best performance is probably Good Will Hunting. You know.
Yeah.
But that feels like lame to say. You know, it's like you come into a movie podcast,
boring.
you're like, what's your favorite movie? You're like, oh, Citizen Kane. You know, it's well,
yeah,
it's good, but
the breakthrough is like, well, that we already know about that. That's not an interesting answer, but it might be true.
Yeah. What about The Great Wall? We're not talking about The Departed. You know,
he's great in The Departed.
I think,
but so many people are great in The Departed that it's tough to
talk about a movie. Talk about a gay panic kind of movie where it's like he doesn't really know, you know, where to put his own sexuality in that movie, and you know he's got this beautiful
he's got
psychologist
some impotency issues.
And Leo.
So Farmiga telling Leo to take her cod, and the one time she tries a Boston accent in the film.
Yeah. Oh man. So he's great, and I think like it's tough to even like see his career and how it's kind of changed and evolved, because he goes from, I think, these really kind of intense.
Oh, we've done The Departed on the podcast too, so I guess that was a Damon movie.
Oh, there we go.
I think of him maybe third.
Yeah,
it's Leo and Jack.
It's a Leo Jack.
I think of Leo and Jack more, but he might have more screen time than Leo if you look at it.
I had to like pull up his letterbox just to like double check that he, you know, if we didn't miss any, you know, and I guess he is in Oppenheimer too, but again, not his.
Oh movie. Yeah, we've talked about Oppenheimer too.
Oh, okay, and then The Last Duel. Have you seen it? I'm a lot of Ridley Scott. The
Last Duel. Big Ridley fan.
Sorry, I think that is phenomenal. I love that movie.
Yeah,
Did we talk about this last time I was on the podcast?
Maybe.
Who? Jodie
cool.
Comer?
Jodie Comer's amazing in
beautiful
that
leading
lady. So talented.
She really. Don't try to say it. Not say it. But yeah, she's so good. Oh my god. My rating. Do you want to go first?
Just the spiel. On a scale of 0.5 to 5 at any scale of your choosing, going up by halves. On any scale aside from stars, what would you give Anthony Minghella's?
I'd give it 3.
The talented Mr. Ripley.
Sorry, jumped again. I would give it 3.5 oars.
Oh,
thank you.
Nice.
Thank you.
It's pretty good. I would go 4 out of 5. God, there's one point where Jude Law yells something and is like really struggling to do the accent, but I can't remember what it was. So instead, I'll just say vandalized passports. 4 out of 5.
4 out of 5
vandalized passports.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
So the question this month, threading all the 1999 episodes together.
Yep.
This is only the second episode. I don't know if we came to a perfect polished gem of this version of the question, but essentially what we boiled it down to last time was, if you go back in time to 1999 and change how movies, how like film culture, film history has developed in the last 25 years, what would you change? The example I'll give is we said, film rental companies or stores would still be around.
Oh, I love that.
Because they're fun.
Yeah.
They were fun. Friday night, head in there.
I'd go with my sister. We'd each get a movie.
Yeah.
She would do the classic of let's watch my movie first. And I'd say, okay. And then when it became time to watch mine, she'd go, I never said I was going to watch it with you.
Yeah.
That's a classic older sister move. You know?
Oh, God. Probably worked every time. Just Charlie Brown with the football.
Really, though. Dang, that's like, I was 3 in 1999. So I don't necessarily know if I have like
sure, that's fair. That's fair.
Anything that I love like from that time that I could be like, oh, I wish was still around. But I will say that I movie tie-in like items.
Oh, sure.
I think we could bring that back like in a big way. Like I want to be able to go to get a talented Mr. Ripley Dr. Pepper, I want to be able to do that again.
Yeah.
And I don't want everything to be a meme. Like, oh, have you seen the new popcorn box?
Right, yeah.
I
want everyone to take it
so
seriously.
commonplace that it's like, let's get the talented Mr. Ripley hot dogs, you know, and just
Talented
like
Mr. Ripley, Doritos flavor.
Exactly. Yeah. That's I'm genuinely serious. I think that's what I want. That would be great.
That's a really good answer.
Thank you.
Yeah, that would be cool. It's just like I'm assuming for certain movies there's still like Happy Meal toys.
Yeah.
But
I'm
it's
not
not
watching
like, it's not
these
like
movies.
it's not across the board. Like you go to a supermarket and we got these dudes' faces on everything. I remember during the pandemic when I was like, how long have these Doritos been here?
Yeah.
Where there was still like Jurassic World themed
Yes.
Doritos bags.
Yeah.
Like way after Jurassic World came out, whichever one had come out at that point.
Yeah.
I was like, these are old.
Yeah, we're gonna put these back. Yeah,
And that's the last time I remember it.
Yeah, I want that to be back in a real way.
I do want to do the second Jurassic World at some point. That movie is weird.
I've not seen it.
Movie's weird.
My dad texted me again. He would love to come on and do it because he loves that movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He's like, have you seen it? I was like, I haven't. He's like, you should watch it. I'm like,
Specifically, the second Jurassic World movie.
yeah.
Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, I want to say.
Yep. When my grandfather died, not his father, so he wasn't mourning as much. He had me watch the 5th Indiana Jones with him.
So I saw Fifth in theaters. Dial of Destiny.
Yep. The day of the funeral, actually. I gave the eulogy, and then that evening, he goes, I got it on Blu-ray. Want me to throw it in? I was like, sure, Dad.
Who does he meet up with? Pythagoras or someone?
Yeah, he meets up. That's where I was like, Dad, I love you, but this is not.
And then it's like, and then he's like, and I'm going to stay here. And you're like,
Indy.
Movie, we have not established
that you want to stay here.
That Indy wants to live in this time period more than anything because his life as an 80-year-old man is such a mess. Like, what are you talking about?
I want to die of dysentery. You know, that's what I want. But yeah, my dad loved it. So we'll get him on the podcast all the way from Colorado one of these days.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah.
We should.
We'll zoom him in. He's on the radio, so he's comfortable talking for a while.
Good. Yeah,
so,
that's perfect. That's what we need.
Yeah.
All right, cool. I think that brings us to a close. Our stuff's on Linktree, linktr.ee/late to the movies. Brady, thank you so much for being on this episode.
Of course.